Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kidproof's Beyond Reopening School Conference. It is a pleasure, and thanks so much for joining us today. I see that we have people from all over the world, from Europe, Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, from here in North America. So, welcome everybody. It's a joy to have you. My name is Darine El Masri. I am my two-day jobs are I'm the head of global development and training for Kidproof Canada, and I'm also the president of Kidproof for the MENA region. So I'm happy to have you with us in our session today in response to the extraordinary and challenging times we find ourselves in right now as we deal with school closures, but also as we're planning for schools reopening and as we try to mitigate the long-term impact that this pandemic and the past year has had on our educators. Today is really your opportunity to take seriously the urgency of both supporting teachers and equipping them so that they can really become the partner that you have always wanted them to be and you've always counted on them to be in the learning and education process so that they can in turn support your students in their learning process and so that they can develop optimally. For those who don't know Kidproof, let me just take a second. So Kidproof is a Canadian organization headed by our extraordinary founder, Samantha Wilson. Kidproof is a Canadian organization that specializes in child safety education. So throughout the world, millions of educators, parents, students themselves have benefited from our many programs. And this is why throughout over 28 countries, we've really become the most trusted source, be it for schools, for educators, for parents, but also for government agencies, non-governmental agencies, and all child-centric organizations, because we are the leader in both safety education, health education, and social emotional learning throughout the world. Um, so let's get started. I think we're not there yet with our registration, but I'll just get started because we have a lot to talk about. So our teachers, I think, in the past year have done a heroic job. I think anybody who's doubted the importance and the role that educators play, the value, the essential value of teachers, also if they've doubted the salary that teachers should be receiving, they've certainly been proven wrong in the past year. I don't know if you all remember, but in any country in the world, around the month of March or April, when school closures started happening and confinement, and parents were stuck with their children at home 24/7. We've all received throughout social media, depending on the instant messaging app that you use in your country, be it WhatsApp or Messenger. So parents started sharing these GIFs and these comments. Teachers should earn $1 million, just take our kids back. And so, really, in the past year, any person who's doubted the role that educators play in educating our children, it's not just teaching, but educating our children, have been proven wrong. But also, the truth is, our teachers are not okay right now. And it's okay that they acknowledge that they're not okay and that we acknowledge that they're not okay. Um, we have to remember that long before COVID-19 disrupted schools, teachers were already at risk of burnout. In fact, stress was always cited as the key reason that teachers chose to leave the profession. So, education support, let's look at some statistics before COVID. Education support, that's a UK, in the UK in 2019, had said and had predicted that school standards will fall and mental health problems in the classroom will multiply if we didn't act quickly to give support to teachers and offer them more support. So, in their 2019 study, they said 3 out of 4 teachers and 84% of school leaders, so that's you guys listening to me today, are stressed. Teachers are twice as anxious as the general population. And these things were always the factors that were most cited was that overwork. So overwork of teachers had been normalized, and teachers often didn't feel trusted by the leadership. The American Federation of Teachers in 2017 found that 58% of teachers are depressed. But in fact, in any country statistic, and I can guarantee this, if you go and Google studies that were done in your own respective countries before COVID-19 happened, teacher stress and teacher burnout was a common factor throughout the world. Um, and when we look into these statistics and then we evaluate that the pandemic came and really exasperated the stress, and then now as we continue and as countries continue to navigate these periods of remote education, recognizing and supporting teachers well-being will become a key priority, because yes, teachers are resilient, but we must recognize, and each of you, if you look at your team right now, you would recognize that not only are they not okay, but they are experiencing symptoms of trauma, of post-traumatic stress disorder, of depression, because what happened to them in the past year has been traumatic. So let's look and let's have a quick overview. We've established that pre-pandemic, most teachers were on the verge of burnout. Let's establish what happened to them in the past year, and then see where they are in their well-being and their physical and emotional well-being at right now. So in the last year, let's say in March 2020, this is when, depending on your country, the COVID-19 spread, became a pandemic. Uh, Soon after followed confinement, school closures, social distancing measures. This led to businesses closing, people losing their jobs, financial crisis. And here, just as a first thing, teachers were always on the front line dealing with parents who had lost their jobs, no longer able to afford school tuitions, basic necessities. Depending on the country that you were in, you have felt the financial crisis. Not all governments were quick to provide help or financial help to their citizens. Some countries were not able at all. And so, as these families struggled, all of the burdens were transferred onto teachers. So parents would call and complain, knowing that teachers themselves, their husband or their wives or somebody in their family, had also lost their job, and they were also going through these financial difficulties. But we're not done yet. Depending on your country, there were social uprisings, political instability, sectarian conflicts. If we're looking at the MENA region, I know there's a lot of schools with us here today from Lebanon as well. They've had to endure the horrific Beirut port explosion that really devastated lives. To this day, the effects are being felt, not just in the infrastructure, not just in the lives that were lost, but also the spirits that were crushed as a result of the explosion, the spirits of Lebanese citizens that were crushed. And while all this was ongoing, as soon as confinement happened, as soon as it was declared as a pandemic and school closures, we asked teachers at light speed to right away switch to e-learning. So you have teachers with years of experience, of materials prepared, and you know as educators how important it is when you have all this prepared lesson plans and activities and your syllabus and things that you rely on every year, but then you have to obviously improve and adjust and customize. But you have so much material that you can rely on, and these are essential for teachers. Well, in a minute, it was asked of teachers to put these aside now, go online and continue our children's education. And you have teachers that were from different, backgrounds. In the same school, you had teachers who were very tech savvy, and in that same school, you had teachers that were saying, what is Zoom? What is Teams? How do I make a video? What do you mean doing a PowerPoint presentation? You had teachers that were just completely overwhelmed. They had to rewrite history, and then they passed through that year, and then you had the pandemic that was really growing, numbers were rising, and when we started the academic year of 2020 2021, we were asking teachers in some countries to go back to their classroom or to do hybrid learning. So here they had to work twice as hard. So hybrid learning, they're having to prepare courses for online sessions and courses for face-to-face sessions, and then having to also teach in the same way. And teachers were also burdened by the extra fear and extra stress and worries and uncertainties of having to go back to the classroom. How come I am the only profession other than essential workers and health workers? I'm the only profession that is being asked to go back into the classroom. The pandemic and the sickness brought on by COVID-19 scares me. Maybe I have somebody vulnerable at home, so why am I being asked? A lot of teachers felt undervalued in their profession, and really afraid of that increased risk of exposure to COVID-19, noting that unlike health workers and maybe essential workers, teachers do not have the same protective equipment, don't have that access to the same protective equipment, but also they would I don't but they would also are more exposed because students who are asymptomatic, well, there's a less testing on these students. So in addition of all this happening, all of the economic crisis, financial crisis, teachers were really working twice as hard. Teachers were being asked to choose between their own children and their students. So my students, the schools are closed, my children are at home, and then I also have to teach my own online classroom. So who's going to follow up with my children? Who's going to supervise them? And they had to choose. And so that added trauma, internet connections that weren't working, hindering communication, hindering that online session that they were trying to conduct. And all of this is ongoing. So usually if you went through a traumatic event and then you would go to a professional, a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, which I am not, but if you would go to a kind of that sort of professional, you'd go to them and you tell them, I went through this traumatic event and can you please help me cope? But what's happening right now is that it's not something in the future. It's a lot of things that teachers had to undergo, and that it's something that is going on, that continues. And so this is why emerging research right now, and when I'm saying emerging, it's very emerging. It just came out in 2021, that is now classifying the pandemic as a traumatic stressor event. This is important to know because usually we associate trauma with a violent incident, right? So maybe a deadly car accident, maybe you've been through a war, maybe as a child you were a victim of child abuse or sexual abuse, maybe a dear somebody that a loved one, you lost a loved one. So there are things that could are classified as a traumatic event, possibly creating PTSD like symptoms in you, because they cause a threat to your everyday life. They make you feel isolated, overwhelmed. Well, COVID 19 has been established now by emerging research as having these qualities that would qualify it as a traumatic event, and a traumatic stressor. And so our teachers not only went through that traumatic stressors uh, uh, like any other citizen around the world, but they had the additional trauma of having to conduct online learning, these pressures, parent satisfaction or dissatisfaction, political instabilities in their own country. And so, what am I getting at? What I'm getting at is that these things matter, and teachers are not okay. And it's okay for you and for them to really acknowledge that they're not okay. Because as we've said, before COVID-19, teachers were struggling. They were on the verge of burnout, which impacts heavily on the engagement of educators, which in turn impacts the quality of education and parent satisfaction. But if we ensure teacher well-being, well, then we're increasing work satisfaction, productivity. It has a positive influence on parents. It improves academic achievement. So research has always been clear. If you improve teacher well-being, then you improve student outcome. So today, what we're gonna see is, as we reopen schools, as we put strategies, and we're going to see that there's a lot of concern right now on learning losses, and will we have to tutor, will we have to do remediation measures, will we have to, make the school calendar longer, add additional hours. So as we are planning, and we're going to take a look at that in a later on in the session, but as we are making those plans, do we have the our most important assets in a school are and valuable assets are our teachers. So do we have the teachers who have the emotional well-being, the physical well-being, who are able to carry on these measures, to carry on these policies of remediation, to who are able to help students mitigate their learning losses? And so, if at the source our teachers are not doing okay, they were on the verge of burnout, right now they're doing even worse, then your policy and any policy, any mitigation measure that you'll put will not succeed. Let's look. This is why I really wanted to take a moment and really take a look at the symptoms. I want you to be able to recognize in your educators, in yourselves, I want you to be able to recognize the symptoms of trauma. We've established that the COVID-19 pandemic is now being classified as a traumatic event. So, not everybody reacts to a traumatic event in the same way. So it's not really just the objective circumstance that determines if an event that could be traumatic, has it been traumatic to me? So it's really your subjective and emotional experience of that event, and also a lot of the time your history. So if I have a teacher who has lost a child a few years back, if I have a teacher who had gone through war, if I had a teacher who had gone through a divorce, if I have a teacher who maybe was physically abused when he was young or sexually abused. So if I have a teacher who was already burdened by other trauma, or if I have a teacher that just in her own subjective experience did not really manage to cope well with in the past year. And so this teacher, I have to be able to recognize the symptoms in her so that I can, or him, and give him additional support, but also that I don't, as a school leader, then qualify that or misinterpret these symptoms as lack of dedication or unprofessionalism. So let's take a second and really look into these symptoms and try to understand how our teachers are reacting, how they're feeling right now, most of our teachers. So what happens when somebody goes through a traumatic event? So they have changes in personality. So that's the emotional symptoms. So changes in personality. So you have a teacher who was always very outgoing, very warm. Everybody was drawn to them, and then all of a sudden they're very withdrawn. They're very rude. You just tell them a little remark or ask them something and they're like, I don't have time. They're very irritable, they're very aggressive, they're easily triggered, be it by students or by colleagues or by leadership. So they're very easily triggered, they're very irritable, they can become aggressive, but they're also rude and tough with their students. This is a teacher who was very warm, very compassionate, had a way with students, very energetic, but now has completely changed. In the same way, somebody who was very patient, somebody who was, calm, and now is also very aggressive. You have teachers who are feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, feeling sad. Maybe you're feeling hopeless. And I'm saying you because school leaders, you've been through the same thing and you've had to lead all of this. And so, really, I do want you to take a second and to see if you recognize yourself in these symptoms. So maybe you're feeling just detached. completely numb. You just feel like a zombie going through the motion and just doing exactly what you had to do. You were the kind of leader or educator that just did 150%, and now you're barely doing the 40%. You're just doing what is absolutely necessary, just the urgent um, things that need to be done. In terms of work or symptoms that impact your professional life, so just complete work performance that is reduced, your output is reduced, your motivation is not there anymore, just low job morale. If you're working from school or even at home, you find yourself taking breaks all the time, and maybe next year you'll see these teachers. Maybe she's a smoker, which is not good, but maybe that's the situation. So they're taking bathroom breaks more. They're going outside to smoke a cigarette and come back, and everybody is missing deadlines, right? So we're seeing a lot of that in schools right now. And when I talk to teachers, so in the past 2 3 months, we've done a lot of webinars with educators throughout the world, and this is one of the main symptoms. It's just missing deadlines and not being able to manage everything they have to do and being completely overwhelmed. So this teacher who's usually 2 days in advance, you ask her for a report, you ask her for a lesson plan submission, whatever it is, and she just gives it to you maybe 2 days in advance, a day in advance, at least on time. Right now, she has trouble. Keeping up with deadlines, and she's going to give it to you. I'm really sorry, I didn't have time. I have to give it to you tomorrow in 2 days, and she's always asking for extensions. And a lot of time they're feeling just a complete lack of ability to concentrate. Their memory's completely gone. They tell me my memory's completely gone, and I have just problems with thinking. You know how when you're writing an essay, you do like introduction, development, and conclusion, and there's just like a clear train of thoughts, but that train of thought just does not exist anymore. It's as if your head cannot concentrate. um, Obviously, other cognitive symptom is having flashbacks. Maybe you're hyper vigilant, so you're just in a very. It's not about staying safe, but it's really more and following rules. It's really becoming controlling about it and obsessive about it, of cleaning everything and don't go out. And you're maybe in an elevator and you're afraid to breathe, and really becoming that sort of obsession. You have sleep problems, so your mind is working all the time, and a lot of time your mind cannot shut down the self blame, the guilt, and sometimes the shame. I have a lot of teachers in the past 2 3 months again that were just telling me, I don't recognize myself. I'm not the same parent. I'm not the same teacher. I'm not the same wife or husband. And this is where they're feeling a lot of guilt. So she just tells me, I'm the kind of parent that is patient. You know how when you're, and I think a lot of parents who are listening to me today will really identify with this. So you were usually, the patient parents. Maybe you're lively. Maybe you had a lot of ideas for games and activities at home, and now you just can't do it, right? You really just can't do it, and you have a lot of difficulty. Maybe you have sensitivity to loud noise and kids screaming, and you're easily triggered. And so you usually with your kids, somebody was a little bit resistant, one of your kids, be it a teenager or a toddler, and you just knew how to, I don't want to say manipulate the situation, but just, present it to them differently, and try to get them on your side and try to get them to do what you want them to do. But now you're just triggered and you're impatient, and you find yourself, you're screaming all the time. And your parenting style now is just based on punishment and consequences and reprimands and put downs maybe. And so a lot of teachers are not recognizing themselves with their students. They're also rude. They're not taking the time to build relationships. They're going to the classroom, do this. I don't have time. Our hours have been reduced. So, and with their house responsibilities as a spouse, and a lot of educators are feeling that guilt and shame and self blame. I have teachers who've actually told me that, maybe it would be better if just I do get sick with COVID-19. It would be better for my kids. It would be better for my students. I don't know why I'm still here. And so, and this is the danger of trauma, and this is where it can bring you if you're burned out, if you're overwhelmed. Maybe you have sleep problems, like I said. So in physical symptoms, tense muscles. So sometimes you find yourself having a panic attack, you have nausea, you're shaking, or you have headaches and constant headaches and really strong headaches. Maybe you're just tired. You're tired all the time. You could sleep as much as you can, but you just feel drained and drained physically, emotionally. You're tired. And you have complete lack of interest in your usual activities. You have less a loss of appetite, or maybe you're eating more. But basically, as you see all of these symptoms, and I'm sure you've recognized yourself in some of them, um, what I want you to take into consideration is A, not just recognizing these symptoms in your educators, but I want you to recognize them in yourself and maybe be more accepting as a leader. I don't have a bad character. I'm experiencing a symptom of trauma. And this is really the first step. If I would be sneezing right now, or my nose would be running, you wouldn't say, she's dirty, or, she doesn't have good hygiene. You would just say, this is a symptom of a flu, hopefully not COVID-19, but so you would recognize it as a symptom. And I want you to do that, the same thing, and just be kind with yourself and not have so much self blame. And the same thing for people in your families, maybe a spouse, maybe a parent. So to also take that time, I also want to take a minute here to say, if you're experiencing these symptoms and you just feel that they are getting exasperated, so they're increasing in number of symptoms or in severity, it's important that you do talk to a health professional, and that you don't, self-diagnose, get a proper diagnosis. And although we're going to talk a lot about ways to cope, it's very important that you also, if you feel you're having panic attacks, for example, or consistent panic attacks, this is a time it means that you should really talk to a professional. So what I'm getting at by talking about all of these symptoms is that our teachers are simply not okay. And it's okay for you and for them to acknowledge that they're not okay. Um, because usually when we have educators, and I want you to take that, just imagine 2 years ago, 3 years ago, when you had one teacher who was not doing well. She had maybe experienced a loved one pass away, or she was going through a divorce, whatever it is. You would see when she came back to school, that educator, maybe a head of cycle, maybe a principal, that, or an educator. So the stress that she was under, she was maybe more aggressive with the rest of her team. Maybe she was just completely withdrawn and doing the bare minimum. Whatever it was, it had a ripple effect on the students. It had a ripple effect on the whole department's environment, other educators, the students, even maybe the parents, who weren't recognizing that educator anymore. But now, as you're going to go back to school, you're not going to have one educator with these symptoms. If we don't take care of their well-being right now, you're going to have hundreds of educators going through these symptoms. And so as a school leader, if you don't ensure the emotional health and well-being, if you don't support them in coping, if you don't support them in recovering, then your most important and valuable assets will be suffering, and they will not be able to carry on with any educational plan that you're doing and that you're setting in place for reopening schools. And you, as a leader, have felt this throughout the world. School leadership has been quick to send messages of positivity and encouragement. You were telling teachers, together we can do anything. This will pass. With your efforts, we will build a better tomorrow. And so these messages of support and unity are important, yes, but they will also leave a teacher who is experiencing symptoms of trauma or PTSD, or feeling anxious, where they're going to leave that teacher completely isolated. She's going to feel overwhelmed, and it's going to even exasperate her symptoms. Because when you're brushing off somebody's feelings of despair by a slogan of "there's a light at the end of the tunnel," then you're failing to take care of those people right now. Right now, your educators are feeling sad, they're feeling angry, they're upset, they're anxious, they're worried, they're overwhelmed, they're completely drained, they're unsure, and they're afraid. about the future. So, yet another principal telling them, what a great job they're doing. Okay, that's encouraging. The community telling them that, how heroic they are. Well, that's inspiring. Someone telling them to stay positive or to recognize what they do have and to be thankful for what they do have. Well, that could be, maybe that could give them hope in a better tomorrow. Yes, but that is not what they need to hear right now, because it delegitimizes their real and present feelings of anxiety, sadness, and hardship. And so, if we do not, again, help them cope with these symptoms of trauma, it's going to lead to their burnout, and your quality of education, students' outcome, will suffer as a result. So, what am I asking you to do? What are we here today? Because as teachers, now, as it becomes completely clear that teachers' well-being is impacts academic achievement, then today what I'm asking you to consider is the importance of creating conditions and how to create these conditions. And so this is what I'm offering you today as strategies to support teachers before, during, and after the pandemic, so that you can really ensure the sustainability and the high standards of the education that you offer in your school. I'm asking you to help them and to be interested in helping them deal and cope with their fears and with their anxiety and with this trauma. So, the first strategy that I'm offering, or that I'm proposing to you today, to create these conditions, is one, to acknowledge. I'm just asking you to acknowledge to the teachers that their job is more difficult than ever. Teachers today are doing twice the effort. They're experiencing trauma. They're showing signs of trauma that is that we've seen, and the symptoms that we've looked at. And so now what I'm asking you is to really accept that showing signs of trauma, you will no longer see it as weakness or as unprofessionalism or as lack of dedication. Because a lot of the comments that I've been receiving from educators is simply that I have leadership and heads of cycle. And that was really one of the main reasons that we've decided as Kidproof to do a leadership webinar, is really for them to understand, because we've had leaders who are saying, this is incompetence. This is unacceptable. Why are you missing deadlines? Well, she has her kids at home, and she has her husband. Maybe her husband lost his job, and there's all of these overwhelming work to do with online sessions, and she's teaching from 8 to 2 nonstop. And so, it's really important that we don't see any the lack of usual performance by a teacher as a lack of dedication. So this is what I'm asking of you right now. And one example of acknowledging this, and to really show teachers that you understand what they're going through, it's not just by sending an email and ending it with "stay safe and keep healthy" or "take care, everyone." This is, what do you mean take care? What do you mean take care? I can barely, in some countries there's a financial crisis. Stay safe and keep healthy. I can barely keep food on the table. What are you telling me? What are you telling me? We're just this positive slogan. What I'm asking you, for example, instead of just sending this kind of, slogan of "stay positive and together we can do anything," why don't we end our email saying something like, "Many teachers are experiencing trauma-like symptoms because of the pandemic. So I'm acknowledging that to them. Our counseling department is available to you if you are feeling overwhelmed with feelings of anxiety, of stress, and of depression." So, by doing that, you're not only acknowledging, but you're also building a culture of awareness. So, that's your second step. So, you have knowledge now for yourself that about these issues and about the trauma they're going through, and you've acknowledged that, but you need teachers to acknowledge it as well by creating this culture of awareness. Because if I just have teachers who are feeling guilty and ashamed all the time, then they're even less productive, and that sense of guilt, that keeps them from sleeping. They're in this vicious cycle of depression. And so I need you to ensure that teachers know that what they're experiencing. When I have a teacher that tells me, I'm a bad mom, I'm a bad teacher, I'm a bad um, a husband or wife, and she's telling me all of these things, and I just see them as symptoms. As soon as I tell her, hey, what you're telling me are symptoms of trauma, that's the first step of her feeling better, recovering. Because when you know that your personality didn't change, that you're really on your way, and this can trigger your want and your motivation to get better. And so the way I wanted to do this for you guys is by distributing this guide. So you were all promised that if you attend this webinar, you would receive a free guide. Well, part of this guide, the first surprise is that it's not for you, it's for your teachers. And I think a lot of leadership will enjoy that, because usually when you watch a webinar and you find it interesting, then you try to take the information or whatever material they've gave you, and then you just have to like retype it in a way that you're addressing educators. So I've done the work for you. So the guide in itself addresses teachers and talks to your educators. And that doesn't mean that you all have to, take your pens right now and start taking notes. Everything that we're going to say today is also in that guide, but the language of it is very easy to read. It's a 40, 50 pages guide. So it has a lot of content, and I'll tell you more about what kind of content it has as we go through our session. But the first part of it is really telling teachers what are the various symptoms, and much more than what I've listed a moment ago. So there's a lot of symptoms, and I want them to recognize that, but also I give them effective, practical ways to help them cope and to help them recover. And these are ways that are universal, tips that are universal, no matter their age, no matter their background, their own culture. So any part of the world that you're in, you're gonna find the tip that works for you. So there's a lot of alternatives. There's a lot of tips and things that they can do, and so they're gonna pick something, a strategy that is best for them. And so I want them to read this because it's important that we normalize the factor that educators are suffering from these symptoms, and so that they recognize themselves, so that they don't think that they're going crazy. The second thing is that by building a culture of awareness, it also means that you just make them feel heard. When you're telling them that, this is not a sign of unprofessionalism or lack of dedication, when you're sending this kind of message in your email by having that constant signature, so you're also telling them that you're present, that they can talk to you. And a lot of the time, when positive leadership means just having your door open for your team to come and talk to you and making them feel heard, and having an inclusive strategy in your leadership style. And you don't have to find immediate solutions, and maybe you don't have solutions. In some part of the world where kid proof is present, and we're present all over the world, but in some part of these countries, we have educators that are not earning their full salary. Some of them, their salary, the value of their salary in itself, because of currency depreciation, does not mean anything anymore. So just the value of what they're earning doesn't really, in the market, doesn't really, ça vaut pas grand chose. It doesn't buy them much. And so schools are not doing okay. Parents are not paying tuition. And so the school right now cannot increase the salaries. They're barely able to pay these salaries. And schools, we're not asking you, if you're not able to find solution at the end of the line, the teacher, a lot of their problems maybe are because of financial insecurities. But trust me when I say, if you're hearing them, if you're giving them these kinds of support, and implementing and adopting these kinds of policies that will promote and support their well-being, the sense of loyalty, having a teacher who has the mental and emotional strength to be present, to give you their all, then you'll have it back, because they're going to feel the teacher has my back. The school has, uh, I am an important asset to the school. And then I can think truly as a teacher that we're all in this together. But if the school is just throwing slogans and asking teachers to work twice as hard, then I don't feel that we're working together, right? So it is really important that you normalize the fact, that you help them by making them feel heard. Distribute this guide to everyone in your school. We're going to send it out next week, early next week to you guys. So make sure you distribute it to everyone in your school. And as you're going to normalize, um, these symptoms and trauma, you also should normalize counseling. So just like in the email that suggestion that I said, the little signature that you could add, well, it's really important that you make available at your school counseling for educators with your experienced professionals. So a lot of the schools throughout the world now, it is something that is very common to have either a counselor or psychotherapist or psychologist. So just a counselor that is there available in the past for students. Depending on the size of your school, some schools had 4 counselors, some had just one, some had one that was working part-time. But what I'm asking you to do is to ensure that these counselors that you have are available for educators, and that you make them available for educators, and that they're aware of it. Maybe they can they're able to receive emails. Teachers just schedule confidential, obviously, sessions with them. Maybe the counselors are available twice a week from 11 to 1 p.m. to receive these calls. And so just by making counseling available, but also normalizing it, this really encourages educators to seek help, and so that they're able to cope, and so that, again, they are the partners you want them to be, that you can rely on, especially as schools reopen. Right now, if we're looking at the statistics, if we're looking at the realities, if you're looking at your team, with the hard work that is coming when schools will reopen, with the mitigation of learning losses, with the remediation efforts that you're going to have to do, with the additional hours, with the tutoring, maybe measures that you'll have to add, you're going to ask a lot of your teachers. And right now, the image, the picture that we're seeing is that educators will not be able to carry out your policies, your strategies, with the present emotional and physical status that they're in. And so if we don't really concentrate on making these measures available to them, if you don't help them cope and maybe recover from the trauma that they've been through, then you will that policy will not succeed. The students' academic achievement will suffer, and your school's education standards also will suffer as well. Encourage the creation of peer support groups. So, what I'm asking also is, or suggesting, is that through this, by normalizing counseling, you also can suggest and encourage the counselors at your school to create peer support group. So this is a space that is safe for teachers, obviously, that is confidential as well, and a safe space. So the counselor will join together, maybe 4, 5, up to 10 educators who maybe have experienced the same things in the past year. Maybe they've lost someone to COVID-19. Maybe they've been through marriage difficulties or a divorce. So we know there's a lot of trouble in marriages all over the world. We're going to talk about domestic violence in a moment. And so maybe educators who in the past had also been through other traumatic events. And so the burden of this trauma is being much more heavily felt by them. Maybe simply educators who have felt very overwhelmed with online education and online learning, and just transferring all of their syllabus online. Whatever it is, throughout these phone calls, if you as a leader know of specific situations that your educators have been through, or throughout the phone calls the counselor has been able to identify similar experiences in educators, then you create these peer support groups so that teachers can share their experiences, but also how they've coped with it. And a lot of the time, peer support groups have been proven to be even more effective than one-on-one counseling, depending obviously on the situation and on the emotional disorder, but because they enhance optimism, they give hope. Most of all, they make the person feel not isolated in their problems, not alone in their problems. Maybe they're going to see somebody who has more of a hard time than them. Maybe they see that I have, a lot more problems than others, but whatever it is, they will see that they're not alone, that somebody's experiencing something that is similar, that they've implemented these strategies or they've coped in a certain way, and this really gives them optimism and hope. And so one of the main things that I want you to take out of today is the creation of peer support group. This is an excellent measure that schools can implement. Um, the other strategy that I'm proposing today is to foster positive relationships. And how? So, how is obviously by encouraging teachers to share workloads, to maybe encourage teamwork. So, maybe an educator who's had a hard time, she had somebody that was sick at home. So, the past year was harder on her. So, maybe let's just encourage them to share their PowerPoints and maybe have specific templates that everybody can use. Just encourage teamwork between educators and have that spirit that everybody can pitch in, everybody can help. It really does strengthen, like you said, not just the school, but it strengthens that community building spirit, that I'm part of the community, I'm part of a team. And this is really, when we're talking about positive relationship, this is really the sense that educators have lost. um, I want you to remember, and as an educator, so a lot of school leaders, you started out as a teacher. A lot of your identity came from not just teaching in a classroom, but your identity came from the teacher's lounge and having that bonding time, and going to the teacher's lounge and just talking about your problems. Or you always had that teacher who would say jokes, who would just make little tricks on everybody, and who you were able to sit with educators who became your best friends, who became your allies. And you just had that community spirit and these relationships that were created. And this is really part of your identity. And this physical connection that it brought to you, and spiritual connection and emotional connection, this has been lost. And this is a very essential part of a teacher's identity. So we've been so focused on social distancing, but what it should have been called all along is physical distancing. So physical distancing, yes, but not social distancing. We need social interaction now more than ever. Let me just take a moment and tell you how important social interactions, but also positive relationships are. So, you've all heard about this, right? A few years back, when the first results of the study were announced, it was all over social media because it was very groundbreaking. So, it was called the Harvard Happiness Study. So this is a study for those of you who haven't heard about it. So this is a study that was started in 1938. So this is over 75 years of a research that was conducted, with millions of dollars that were invested in the study. I think over 20 million of dollars. So they took hundreds of people in 1938, and they were from different social economic background. They were people, who were educated, not educated, poor, rich. And so they wanted to study what was the key to happiness and what caused happiness in a human being. And so they followed them yearly. And to that study were added their family members. So their sons and daughters, their wives, so all of the members in their family and their acquaintances. And so this study has now thousands of people for 75 years and more. So it's still ongoing. And what did they find? They found that the key to happiness is good, positive, loving, and especially loving, supportive relationships. So, having these relationships in our lives not only makes us happier every day, but also keeps us healthy. So they found that people with positive and good relationships in their lives, it pushed back sickness. So they were healthier for a longer time. Or if they did get a sickness, a serious one, it also gives them more chances to overcome that sickness. So this is not genes. It wasn't, their DNA. It was really good relationships, being so surrounded by positive supporting relationships and loving relationships. And just another thing that the study has done, a lot of people don't know that, is that also positive and healthy relationships and loving relationships helps us with our memory. As we're growing older, like, my memory's gone. I don't have, I can't remember anything anymore. It just poof. And so long before COVID, I had that problem. And so it's very important to know that loving relationships also helps us with our memory as we grow older. And so when I'm telling you to ensure that there are regular short meetings that are conducted, is because I want to give back teachers this sense of community, these relationships that they've relied on for years, that sense of identity. Right now, the teacher feels completely alone. So she's sitting behind a laptop, and then she's a mom or a dad. And so that there's no longer that sense of community that is being built, and relationships that she had with her equals. One of the schools that implemented this strategy, a teacher wrote back to me and said, I finally had the impression that I was talking to my equals. So usually, if we have a short meetings, it was just about work. So lesson planning, or just a strategy, or somebody telling us how to do a video. But I was missing that opportunity to talk to my equals. What does it mean? She was either a mom, either she was talking to her students, either being a spouse, but she wanted to just talk to her equals, other teachers who are living the same experience. And she said that my day changed. For the next couple of days, I just felt so much better having had that opportunity to just sit and chat. So I'm asking of you, all these heads of cycles with me today, all school leadership, department heads, I want you to schedule maybe once every month. That's the minimum, but at least once every 2 weeks, I want you to schedule 30 minutes at least with your educators within your department. And I want them to indicate it as a work thing, right? Because I want them to attend, and I want them to be able to tell their families, I have a work meeting, and so they can have that moment to themselves. But during that meeting, nothing about work is being said. Maybe you're going to want to have a teacher who, has some breathing tips or relaxation tips, or just something fun. And it doesn't have to be, if they just end up chatting and just having fun, that's fine. And don't ask that teacher who's preparing, healthy meals on a small budget. Don't ask her to prepare something. We don't want to add more work to that teacher, obviously. But so the important thing here is for them to have fun and to laugh and to really just interact and rework. And this is your opportunity to foster and to rework on these positive relationships and community building, and for them to feel part of that school again. This will also be an opportunity where you will see if an educator is, less participative, and she's gonna be on the session, but she's gonna be like this and maybe laugh. And that's okay. And leave her, don't try to force her to talk, and don't, just, check in on her. And maybe you'll discover that she's having a harder time during this pandemic. And this is where maybe you'll ask a member of your team to check up on her. Not that, she's not gonna probably, tell all her problems to that educator, but to that other teacher. But we're just asking them to, check up on her, call her. Maybe you will call her and say, how are you? I'm just checking up on you, and talk about something, irrelevant, maybe just, what's going on in the world right now, and just give her that opportunity to have a moment of a positive relationship that will have an impact on her happiness. And so, engaging with others, connecting with others. And I'm telling you this right now as leaders as well. Do not isolate yourself. Don't withdraw from others. I know with the pandemic, everybody's going, I go at the end of the day, I have barely the energy to talk to anybody and I'm just going through the motions. But I want you to make that extra effort. I think the study now proved how important it is for you to engage and connect. And thank God for technology. You can video conference anybody, talk to an old friend, talk to a family member, call, engage. This will change your outlook. This will have so much impact. It will literally rewire your brain and your well being. Do other school community building initiatives like well-being webinars. A lot of the schools are doing this right now. So just something that tells the schools it doesn't cost you much. It tells your teachers we're actually in this together and we're here for you without necessarily costing you. And I know there's a lot of financial restraints on a lot of schools right now. An opportunity also to create positive relationships and that community building initiatives is to create opportunities for staff to participate in community outreach. So that means volunteer work or social change. And um, I know a lot of you are saying, especially in countries that were more hit by this pandemic, a lot of educators and leadership that are contacting me today throughout the world from all of our Protect Ed schools networks are saying, I'm just done. I'm overwhelmed. I'm done. And so when I'm telling them, why don't you participate in community outreach and organize an initiative for volunteering for some of your staff to join? And she's like, I need somebody to help me. I need community outreach for me. I need people to volunteer for me. And you're asking me to do initiatives for others. I can't, I can barely handle myself right now. But the truth is that when you're helping somebody else, right? When you're volunteering, it's a truth now universally acknowledged by study after study that when you're helping somebody, when you are doing volunteer work, not only does it really boost happiness, but it really gives you a sense of purpose. And when you're helping somebody, the person that gets the most out of it, it's not the person that you're helping, but it is yourself, right? So you're getting that sense of self-esteem back, that sense of purpose. You're just higher level of satisfaction and you feel better that day, you feel better that week. And so it's important that you give that to your educators. And this is also going to help them rewire their brain and it's going to really boost their well-being. And not only that, but by doing these volunteering, and we're talking and we've established the importance of positive relationships. And so it's going to get them to meet maybe like-minded people from all over the school. I'm stuck with this department, this cycle, so I haven't, met everybody, but maybe I can develop relationships with other educators that have the same values as me, the same energy, the same perspectives, just like-minded people, and develop these positive relationships in my life. Because maybe in my personal life I don't have access to this. Maybe I am in a violent home. Maybe I am a child who was abused by my parents in the past. Maybe my parents have passed away. Maybe I don't have a support system, and so I'm really falling under the burdens of this pandemic. And by doing this, then you're encouraging people to connect, and you don't have to wait for schools to start again. um, Maybe the outreach that you're doing is helping a teacher who's under particular financial difficulties, to try to help her in a way, financially, or getting her essentials that she's not able to afford for herself or for her family. And I always take the time just to say this here. The educators I'm talking to and some of the leadership that I'm talking to that are telling me, like I said in the beginning, why don't I just get COVID? Sometimes I think about just getting the sickness and it would be better for me, for my family. I'm just done. I can't take this anymore. And I do think about just being done with all of this. You have to realize that trauma and going through trauma will give you a sense of helplessness, hopelessness. It will make you forget your sense of purpose. It makes you forget your strength. It makes you forget, why am I here? A lot of educators ask me, sometimes they're just like, why am I here? What's my purpose? What's the point to all of this? And for all of you, and just somebody earlier, and this is why I want to take a chance to say this, somebody earlier in the private chat did say to me, this is exactly how I feel, and they have thought about suicide. And to that person, I want to tell you, and to everybody hearing me right now, and to all of your educators, I want to tell you it is very important, be it through community outreach or just taking a second to recognize everything that you've accomplished in your life, all of your successes, all of your strengths, be it, the years of education and the impact and the changed lives that you've impacted by educating students all over the world. I want you to take a second to recognize that as an educator, your voice is immortal. Very few professions can really boast that about themselves. Maybe if you're a very popular singer, if you're, Frank Sinatra or Charles Aznavour, or trying to find, you know, singers from all over the world. So maybe Kaltoum for the Arab world. So these voices are immortal, right? But your voice is immortal as well as an educator. You're going to have for years to come students who will remember that thing that you told them, that lesson that you've taught them, and they're going to teach it to their own children, and their children, they're going to teach it in return to their own children. So your voice is immortal, and the impact that you do, you're going to be remembered for years by thousands of students. You have students 20 years from now, 30 years from now, that are going to say, I remember this teacher who has, who really transformed my life, who really raised me up and elevated me and gave me self-esteem and self-confidence and made me see that I can. And a lot of the time, believing that you can do something means that you will do it. And just by giving them that belief, it changed their lives. And so you have thousands of people that have in years to come, and every year, that are sending you this positive karma and positive thoughts and saying, if you're religious, God saved this person, she really made a difference. But also, if you don't take care of yourself, if you're not mindful about the kind of classroom management and positive discipline that you have in your classroom and positive communication, that you can also be immortal in a more negative way, right? So you can have thousands of students that say, this teacher completely destroyed me and my self-confidence. And so you're not going to have as much of a good karma. And so obviously there's a choice to be done here. But most teachers, and a lot of teachers, I want you to remember the years of education and the impact and the changed lives that you have impacted. I want you to remember simply maybe the family that you've built. I want you to remember the talent that you have, the teacher that talked, educator, I'm sorry, or leader that talked to me earlier. I want you to remember maybe your intelligence and diligence. Maybe you were the kind of educator that everybody came to because they had that, an essay that they were writing or a lesson plan, and they wanted to make sure that there was no errors. And you were the kind of educator that was really diligent. We have educators that are warm and everybody was drawn to them, and all other educators or children maybe spoke to them about their problems, and students that came to them years after and say, hello, Miss Dahin, I miss you. I miss having you as a teacher. Whatever it is, your life has meaning. Please recognize it. Please, I want you to acknowledge that and remember your purpose. You have purpose, you have strength. Just don't let this pandemic tear you down. And so I'll talk to you more, to that person who talked to me earlier. When we're fostering positive relationships, that would mean, and the Harvard study that I spoke about, it would also mean that it's important that we keep negative relationships as much as bay. We avoid them as much as possible if we can't get rid of them altogether. As a school, you need to be firm about workplace bullying. We talk a lot about, bullying between students, but we rarely talk about workplace bullying. And workplace bullying will come and completely have an impact on your teacher's productivity and teacher turnover rate. So usually it's your highest quality educators who are the best educators or teachers. These are the ones who will just stay, will say, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. I can't take her yelling, or I can't take the discrimination that she does. She favorizes, does favoritism. She just gives me all of the work and then takes credit for it. Or just teachers between themselves. So they gang up, they do these little cliques, they leave out people, they spread gossip, they spread rumors. And this kind of toxic environment, usually it's the best team members that are impacted, and these are the ones that leave. And so there's a damage to your reputation, there's a damage to parent satisfaction as well. So um, bullying and workplace bullying attacks the people that you want as teachers. And so here you have a responsibility. You cannot be the listening ear to gossip. You cannot be the first one to spread a rumor. Obviously, the most powerful leadership tool you have is your own personal example. So you cannot be the one who are spreading gossip or rumor. Educators or leadership who have a leadership style that is more authoritarian, that is more just that you create these cliques and you are the one who is doing favoritism. So it's important that you really be honest with yourself and what kind of environment and are you adding to the trauma of teachers that they are living right now. So don't be a listening ear. And some of the staff want to say rumors, and she went into the principal's office, and what is she doing there? And so just say I don't have time for this, and this is inappropriate, and just say that and be firm about that, and address any kind of bullying incidents, and make reporting available and confidential and anonymous, so that they can tell you about what's happening. Expect denials. Expect that the bully will say, I didn't do this, or lies. Um, because a lot of the time, the educator really believes that they're not the ones that did that, when it's part of their character. So I've had heads of cycles who then are anti-bullying in the workplace workshop, and who would really just be the first ones to say how respect is important and being inclusive and hearing everybody's opinions. And then when I had the surveys, she would be the one who most bullies her employees. So sometimes it's really a personality problem. It's rooted in a personality problem. Somebody who's addicted to power, maybe, who doesn't have empathy or lack emotional intelligence. And so these people, they're very likely not to change. So although you're going to make consequences clear and that you're going to implement consequences to workplace bullying, and they don't have to be punitive consequences, they can be really constructive ones, like asking them to attend positive leadership courses or teamwork, or these kinds of soft skills building, and building their emotional intelligence, really helping them develop that. But sometimes it's so rooted in their personality that they will not change. And so as a leader, you're going to have to take decisions. Do I leave that educator who is maybe having that negative impact on everybody else, even if they're very highly proficient and they're very effective at their job? But I think now organizations around the world know that experience and expertise can be taught. However, your character cannot change. And it is this that will, in the long run, really impact the quality of education in your school. So be firm about workplace bullying. And to conclude this part of our webinar, the last thing is to adopt policies that will promote, that will support, and prioritize teacher self-care. What does that mean? If we're online or if we're in the classroom, I have teachers right now who are conducting online courses or online lessons, and they're literally in front of the computer, front of their screen from 8 a.m. until 2 or 3 p.m. This is one class after the other, with the questions period, talking to students, and then logging on to the other session right away. She doesn't have any time. So what, as a leader, can I expect from this teacher at 1 p.m., 2 p.m.? She's been talking nonstop for the past 4 hours, 5 hours. So as an educator, but as a leader, you need to really ensure that what is important for my educators. So throughout the world, just give them these breaks. Ensure, be it when we go back to school, when we reopen school in their classrooms, do they have sufficient time for a break? Just, take a breath, maybe, have the opportunity to move. Maybe it's important for them to just relax. Prayer in some schools is important, or for some teachers is important. Do they have sufficient time to eat or to have lunch? So these educators that are online right now, they don't even have time to eat. She doesn't have time to check on her children. And this is creating additional anxiety, additional stress. But why teachers are drained. And this is a very important thing that I'm going to tell you today. A main factor of why teachers are drained right now is also because their students have gone through the trauma. So the two, let's not forget, and we're going to talk more about that in a minute. Students have also gone through this pandemic, and we've established that the pandemic is a traumatic stressor. It's been qualified as that right now by recent research. So the students have gone through not only confinement, but being isolated from their friends, the stress of distance learning. They've gone through the financial crisis and maybe financial strains that are on their families, and maybe political instabilities in some countries. So, research is now proving that students are more depressed, they're unmotivated, and they're acting out in their online classrooms, correct? And you know this, and your teachers are telling you this. So this is draining for teachers. And educators who deal with traumatized children develop their own symptoms. So this is an additional trauma, if you want. So they develop their own symptoms of traumatic stress. This is called secondary traumatic stress. So teachers are not having to only deal with their own trauma, but they're having to deal with the trauma lived by students and taking on all of this acting out or disruptive behavior. So this is a secondary traumatic stress, and it's important. And this, yeah. So what I'm getting to is teachers now tell me, I don't want to be a teacher anymore. I used to love teaching. I used to enjoy teaching. And I liked it. But now I wish I wasn't a teacher. I don't enjoy it anymore. I just sit in front of the laptop and I dread the moment I have to turn on the class. I'm just exhausted of these kids that don't listen. And I know it's not their fault, but I'm drained. And so, in the guide that I will be sending you, other than symptoms and recognizing themselves and ways to cope and hopefully recover from the trauma, what I give teachers are strategies that they can implement that build strong relationships with their students. And, like I said, and this comes with a personal guarantee that they will have the most difficult, maybe disruptive students in their class. If it's online or if it's face to face, these strategies that I've laid out in this guide will help them turn their most difficult student in the most collaborative, engaged, even caring student, interested student that they've ever hoped for him or her to be. So the strategies that I offer in this guide, I offer also a variety. The same thing that I did with the trauma and how to recover from it. So a lot of strategies, a lot of tips. It works with any personality, age group, whatever your teacher's culture or traditions, whatever topic she teaches, be it, languages or sciences. So whatever is her subject matter is, she will find the strategy that will work for her classroom, for his classroom. And there is really that personal guarantee. If she applies that strategy consistently, one of these strategies at least, she will see an immediate transformation in her students. And then you can watch your educators enjoy teaching again. So now that I have your commitment, and I hope that I have your commitment to support your teachers by implementing policies to equip them, by creating the conditions necessary to ensure their mental health, to ensure their well being, so that they are able to continue and to carry on your strategies of when you reopen schools, to mitigate the learning losses that students have suffered, to be able to be really the strong partner that you want them to be. To You need to implement these conditions and really take care of your most valuable asset. If your teachers crumble, your school will suffer, obviously. Now, my next goal is to elevate your students, as promised in the session outline. So, what my promise here is, I want to ensure that your students, as you reopen schools, but also as of today, they also have better academic performance, they have a better attitude, they have reduced emotional distress, fewer disruptive behavior. So this is what I'm promising in the next session based on research. um, but before I get to there, we have to look at the profile of our children all over the world. How are they doing? So, how are our kids doing so that we can know how to take care of them? Let's first take a look at students pre COVID. What are the stressors that students were going through? What did their lives look like before COVID? So, times had changed. Obviously, parents, and as an educator, as a parent, as a community leader, as a school leader, you know that children in today's world are facing many more dangers than when we were young. Parents knew this. Parents knew that also that they didn't have the tools a lot of the time to communicate effectively with with their students about with their children about these topics. These the changes that were going on in society were not something that the parents had been through necessarily, and so they had a lot of difficulty to recognize the risk that their children were facing. They had difficulty to communicate with them or give them the tools to protect themselves. And so they threw this responsibility on schools. They heard about a drug issue in their community. They heard about a child getting kidnapped. And so they'd go the next day to the school and say, so are you going to teach about drug abuse? Are you going to teach about because kidnapping and how to prevent that, knowing that educators also often were not trained in these subject matters. And so the students were a lot of the time left alone, facing many dangers in today's world. These dangers being the risk that the internet brings with it. So here we have obviously excessive screen time that takes away from their ability to focus, from their ability to concentrate, to be creative, that takes their social skills and ability to develop healthy relationships. We have addiction to gaming, addiction to gambling. We have inappropriate content and then being exposed to inappropriate content. We have their exposure to online predators throughout the world and pedophiles. As an educator, another danger that really preoccupied schools in the last 10, 15 years is bullying. So I know what you're going to tell me, Darine, bullying is not a new danger. There was, when we grew up, there was a bully. Maybe I was bullied. Maybe you're remembering that you were a bully. So bullying is not a new danger, but I think as an educator, I think in the past 10 years and 15 years, the level of bullying, the level of aggressivity that we were seeing between kids, the meanness that we were seeing between children, that was something that we had never seen before. And just the sheer volume of bullying. And then came cyberbullying, and it was following students at home. And it was just completely disrupting also the education. One of the first sign of bullying is reduced academic achievement, right? So the child who's sitting in class and all he can think about is, are they spreading rumors? Are they talking about me? Are they going to say disparaging comments about me? Who am I going to play with during recess? Are they going to take my lunch? Am I going to get hit again? So the child who, with all of this, who does not feel safe in his classroom, cannot focus on your class, right? So his last worry is your math class or whatever you're teaching in languages. All he could think about right now is what's going to happen to him at recess. And so it was really impacting the students' ability to attain their full potential. In every country around the world, drug exposure, students and children were being exposed to drugs at an earlier and earlier age. We have increasing statistics, be it child abductions, child abuse. Sometimes it's not necessarily that the abuse is increasing, but in most countries, a lot of countries, maybe there's more reporting. And so we're seeing more and more the realities in every country. But we have car accidents that are taking away, car accidents being one of the leading cause of deaths for kids or young adults between the ages of 18 to 25. So car accidents. But just simply, I think one of the main things that are not just, teenagers. Now it's starting as early as 8 years old and 7 year olds, because kids are being exposed to social media, because maybe there's not enough education at home or at school. And so they're going on to social media and being pressured either by their friends through cyberbullying, or just by the media and the messages perpetrated by the media itself, of specific body images, of specific a way to act and a way to be and a way to talk. A lot of our girls right now and boys, they're being pressured, in order to be valued, in order to have followers, in order to be liked as a person. Well, you have to maybe act more sexy. You have to dress sexier. You have to expose yourself in an inappropriate manners. And so we were seeing a lot more sexting incidents that were happening all over the world, in schools all over the world. And so instead of, having women and young girls that were being empowered to be recognized, to be followed, to be liked by others, you could just simply be an effective, strong, resilient woman, educated woman. Instead, we were telling them, post a sexy picture. And these pressures were also leading a lot of kids to depression and even suicide. In fact, a study by the WHO in 2007 had said that suicide was one of the three leading causes of death among adolescents. And so this is what our kids were facing before the pandemic. Let's now take a look at the devastating status of our emotional status of our kids. And these are very updated numbers. This is a study that was published in February 2021, following almost a year of the pandemic. What the study told us, this is out of the European Child Adolescent Psychiatry Journal. So what they're saying is, after our students, with all of the stressors that they had in their normal lives, and with also studying and exams and all of that, but being exposed to COVID, financial problems, social isolation, political instability that happened in some countries, the violence, the economic crisis, natural disasters that also happen in some countries. So what we're seeing is 70% of 6 to 18 years old, 70% are experiencing at least one of the following: depression, anxiety, deteriorating attention span, irritability, hyperactivity, obsession, and compulsions. This is the the students that your teachers are teaching right now, and this is the student that you'll get back in September. The numbers may be the result of scientific research, but you and your teachers, I know for a fact, have witnessed these symptoms in your students, in your online classroom, through anecdotal evidence. So you've seen these numbers every single day. So this is not news to a teacher. The reason all of this is happening, and some students are suffering even more, is that you have the general pandemic as a trauma, and with it, its financial difficulties and etc. that I've just named. But in some households today, as children are growing up, and in the past year, they lived in unsafe homes as well. So here you have additional trauma. So let's pile on, in addition to the pandemic, more trauma. This more trauma and these additional dangers would come from domestic violence that is on the rise. So the stressors of the pandemic, with the effect that it had a lot of the time, because you had job loss, because you had women that were, isolated with their abusers. So in normal times, 1 in 3 women worldwide experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime. And so a lot of this violence comes in intimate relationships, in marriages, and what the United Nations is calling the shadow pandemic is you have parents because of the parent stress, because of the additional trauma and the symptoms of trauma, the aggressivity, irritability, like I said, now we're seeing domestic violence and these statistics on the rise. And so you have children who are witnessing all of this, and obviously, it's impacting their emotional, their physical well being, their emotional and physical development as well. And this can have an impact on a long-term basis, and the violence that they've witnessed, be it verbal, emotional, or physical violence that they've witnessed between their parents, can have a long-term effect on them, and really does create a trauma, an additional trauma. um, Added to this is the child abuse cases that are on the rise. So we have parents who are suffering from trauma that are using now negative parenting practices, again because of their irritability, because of their just they're just tired and exhausted, so they are easily triggered, and they're just yelling all the time. They're over controlling. It creates parents who are overtly hostile. And we see today a rise of parents who were previously loving and caring, who are now abusive. And the child is not only, you have children who are now being abused by their parents, but let's not forget about children who were victims of abuse and now are just on lockdown and isolated with their abuser, sometimes with their sexual abuser. So they're victims of sexual abuse or emotional abuser, and they don't get that break. They don't get that usual support or break that they would get by going to school, by talking to a teacher, by getting, help from a counselor at school, and so, or even family members. And so they're not getting that support, and they're just in that abusive environment day in and day out. And so you're seeing students that don't want to open the camera, and they can't focus with you in the classroom online because they're hearing in the background their father yelling at their mother, maybe, or they're hearing, or they've just been slapped, or they've just been hit, or they're being yelled at for being lazy. And so you have students that are just unable to focus, and this will have an impact on learning losses that we'll see later on. And if you look at statistics, and I want you to look at your local statistics, any country right now, if you have a reporting mechanism, if you have law enforcement, you will see that the reporting of child abuse and of domestic violence in your respective country has increased, be it in Canada, be it in Europe, being in the Middle East, being in Asia, being in North Africa. These statistics have dramatically increased. Let's take a look now at another danger that is happening during the pandemic, which is online danger. So you have students, confinement happened, and what happened with that is that by kids moving to online, because of self-isolation, they're spending more time online, and so you have increased, obviously, exposure to screen time. So comes with it all of the problems of concentration, focus, maybe depression that comes with exposure to social media. They're unable to lend attention, they're unable to be as creative, their social skills are suffering. So you have of that danger. But what it also meant is, um, unlike any other time, there was an unprecedented rise in young people being exposed to online predators. So, online predators, obviously, new kids are spending more time online, so they're spending more time online, and they just multiplied according to the UNICEF. Um, I want to give you here two statistics to show you. In Canada, for example, between the months of March and May, so when the pandemic had just started and confinement had just started, and all of the kids just threw themselves online, there was a 45% increase in child sexual online crimes, right? Crimes that had to do with online predators and sexual crimes committed against children. 45% increase. This is in Canada. Let's look at a more vulnerable country, for example, a country like Lebanon. Um, for that same period, so also for the first 3-4 months of the pandemic, law enforcement saw 184% increase of online sexual crimes committed against children. So, and I can assure you, I can guarantee these risks, these dangers, this increase happened in every single country. And it was a real worry for international NGOs. And this also had an impact on our kids, on their emotional well being, on the trauma they experienced in the past year. And what are we going to see? So, the last danger of the pandemic is obviously the learning losses. So, with all of this happening, countries scrambled with, different learning modalities. So they were scrambling. Some implemented a remote learning, some implemented hybrid learning, some implemented, they kept their in-person education, but by keeping specific health and safety measures. And teachers really, we have to value, this is the main point of our webinar, we have to value the amazing job that they did and the effort that they put in to try to mitigate the learning losses and to try to give a continued education to our children. But what we're going to see in the coming months, what we're now and research is now really pointing out at, is that as we reopen schools, right, and this is the topic of our webinar, as we reopen schools, there will be learning losses. We found that depending on the social economic level of a student, sometimes in the same classroom, not just from country to the country, but in the same classroom, a student had access to an iPad, another barely had a smartphone, internet connections that weren't working, they didn't have the same access to that education. And a lot of disparity occurred between one child to the next. And so you're going to have to put in policies for next year that will look like, offering tutoring, remediation, having to reteach students maybe all over again, maybe, having 2 years worth of academic content just put into 1 year. Maybe you're going to have to do changes to your schedule for that school year. Basically, will we have to teach again content to students that they failed to learn in the past year? And this is what we'll know more in the coming month. Last Friday, actually, on March 26, 2021, Johns Hopkins University, UNICEF, the World Bank launched a COVID-19 global education recovery tracker, which will help measure really the status of schooling and assist every government throughout the world in these decisions and planning their efforts to mitigate the learning losses. But as we think of that, as we think of what are the strategies that we're going to put, and before we rush and we dive into the academic content, before we remediate, before we mitigate these academic losses, I want you to ask yourself, are my students ready and able to learn? Research has told me that students of all ages, they're facing risks. 70% of them are depressed, are showing signs of trauma. What does that mean? That means that when we reopen classes post-COVID, then we're going to have students that have thought problems, attention deficit, anxiety, depression, stress. We're going to have students that are showing disruptive behavior in their classrooms, aggressive behavior in their classroom. They're going to have problems in social relations. We thought we had a problem with bullying before COVID. I don't want to even think about bullying inside classrooms after COVID. We're going to have students that are completely withdrawn. They internalize everything. They're feeling physically sick or in pain. We know that when a child is being abused, most of the time, if they're being abused at home, most of the time they will either come to class and just isolate with themselves and be completely withdrawn and not really focused, not really be there, or they're going to have the other a reaction at the other extremity where they're going to be aggressive, they're going to bully others. So now when thinking as every school leader, I really want you to take take this into account. Every school leader talking and planning for next year and listening to me and thinking about the either tutoring or how are we going to change school hours, are we going to put additional time in our calendar. I want you to think, not just do I have the teachers who will be able to carry out the plan, so you're going to put well-being measures to improve their well-being so that they're able to carry out that plan. But now, do I have a public? Do I have students that are able to walk with me through this plan, that are able to learn, that are ready to learn, that are even desiring to learn, that want to self-accomplish themselves? And yes, it is alarming because, as all of you know, all of the experienced educators listening to me today, you are all aware of the concept that you must Maslow before you bloom, right? Before complex learning, before we try to jam in 2 years of education into 1 year and add additional hours, let's see when our students when our students I was just looking at the comments. So when our students are not receiving the education, or their fundamental needs are not being met, when their emotional well-being is not being cared for, then they are not able to achieve academic success. They're not able to learn. um, what we mean by you have to Maslow before you bloom. Some of you know of that teaching concept or concept in education. For those of you who don't know, so Maslow was an expert, a psychologist in the 70s, who said that the human being, in order to self-actualize, right, self-actualize, to become the best that we can be, to have the desire to learn, to be able to learn, to be able to really become the most that we can be to achieve our full potential. So before we get to all of this, there are fundamental needs that we need to answer prior to getting there. And it really goes as a hierarchy, meaning that you have to answer one to get to the next level, answer the next level to get to the other level. So let's see that Maslow pyramid of needs. So we have the physiological needs. So obviously a person has to answer their, you have to eat, breathe, drink water, be warm, before anything else. This is the first thing that you think about. So even if there's a war, even if there's fighting outside of your house, even if there's bombs going off, if you don't have foods, you will find yourself going under the fire just to get a piece of bread and come back. So we see that physiological needs do come before safety needs. You're going to want to guarantee these essential needs before you think even of your safety. Once physiological needs are met, then you think about your both physical safety and emotional safety. So your needs here are to feel physically safe inside a shelter, but also safe inside your home. You need to be able to feel that I'm in my room, that my sexual predator is not going to go inside the room. I'm going to need to feel safe inside my classroom before going anywhere else. I need to feel that I have the health elements necessary, the personal security that is necessary for me to thrive. And so this is where we see kids, if they're not, it's not just kids, who haven't eaten in the morning, who went to bed hungry, that are not able to focus in the class the next day. It's also the kids who have just heard their parents fighting, who have been slapped, who don't feel safe at home. Like I explained, who are being bullied inside school. There's a predator online asking them to send maybe explicit images of themselves, and they're blackmailing them. Whatever the need is, if the child does not feel safe, they cannot focus on their learning. Once they feel safe, if they have that feeling of safety, if they have those tools to cope with danger surrounding them, be it physically or because of people, then they can answer and look at their need to feel loved and belonging. So children here, but every human being, that you will also need to, feel that I belong to this family. I'm not isolated. I belong to this school. I'm being loved. I'm being cared for. A lot of our kids right now, this is a main need. So even if they're not being hit at home, they're not being abused, there's no domestic violence, they're not being targeted by necessarily a predator or cyberbullying. But what they are is they don't feel a sense of belonging or love. They've been cut out of all social interaction. At home, their parents are busy, they're distracted, they're also just completely drained, they're withdrawn, they had financial problems, they're thinking about that. So kids are not being receiving that same sense of love and belonging. There's no sense of belonging at school or with friends, and there's no belonging at home or within a sense of family or a community. And this is impacting their self-esteem. So there's no social circle, there's no family maybe that is telling them, how smart they are, how creative they are. And this is when teachers make a big mistake. A lot of teachers, and this is important, a lot of teachers and educators listening to me, a lot of teachers right now are just jumping online and trying to, we have this session, it's 40 minutes, I have to teach you a lot of things. And they're not taking the time to really reinforce positively their students, saying positive comments. Oh, this is a great idea, Dahin. Oh, Juliana, what a creative answer you've given me. Or just I'm very excited about your focus right now. So we're not giving these positive reinforcements to kids, neither from their teachers, or they're not getting that from a sense of school and teachers and educators. They're not getting that from friends. Maybe there is friends who tell them they're pretty or that they're smart. Their parents as well, who are, maybe they're not to the point of being abusive, but they are being maybe emotionally negligent and emotionally abusive. So not physical, but there's other parts of abuse that also have as much, if not more, of a traumatic effect on a child. And so these children, if you don't have all of these needs met, then you cannot not only not be able to self actualize, but you don't have the confidence, you don't have the desire, you don't have the want or need to be the best that you can be. And I guarantee you, call the parents of your students today, call them, and they will tell you, because I've done webinars with hundreds of parents throughout the world, and there's always the same thing. My kids, I see my kids, they're lazy, they just, my child doesn't care if he passes, if he doesn't pass, he doesn't care about his studies. He opens his laptop from his bed, he does his online class, he closes it, he then watches Netflix, whatever, he's barely doing his homework, and he tells me that I don't care. I don't care if I pass. I don't care if I don't pass. I'm just completely demotivated. I don't feel like doing this. They're just spending their time on TikTok or whatever and just wasting time. That is the reality. And the reason for that, it's not a mystery. It's not an enigma. The reason is they've been through a trauma that is causing symptoms. They are living under conditions that is taking away safety needs, even from the economic crisis that they're feeling. So it's just taking away all of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. And so they cannot reach that higher level. So Maslow before Bloom is, as you all know, Bloom's taxonomy. So teachers around the world base their lesson plans on Bloom's taxonomy, and it really gives us that a pyramid of learning objectives that you have to meet for optimal learning. So from remembering things to understanding, and then ending with creating your own content. So before we can expect students to learn, before complex learning can happen, then, and before, as leaders, you mitigate and you put in process these how to mitigate these learning losses that have happened in the past year. Are you Maslowing before you bloom? Are you offering your students an opportunity inside their curriculum so that they are able to talk about the safety or the dangers issues that they're facing, how to resolve a conflict with a parent, how they can deal with cyberbullying. They're now feeling very unmotivated. They no longer have a growth mindset. They're now feeling just incapable. They feel like a loser. Are you dealing with these issues so that he can then turn on math class and actually be able to learn? And a lot of the time, that what schools refer to or go to is just holding these kind of workshops or having an awareness week. A lot of schools have awareness weeks about anti-bullying, and that's good. That's fine. You have a awareness program about maybe an awareness week, anti-drugs week, etc. But research now proves that, and this is a quote by Mark Brackett, who is the director at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and this is a quote that he said during the World Innovation Summit for Education in late 2020, so back in November. What he said is, we need to admit that throwing scattered interventions like a workshop here and there will not solve the issue. I can't expect that my students will Maslow before Bloom if I'm just offering them once every 6 weeks a little workshop here and there, or just having a school seminar about a topic or a student assembly about a topic, and expecting them to really develop that emotional intelligence that is necessary for them to succeed in today's world. And we're all running, parents, educators, schools, we're putting so much focus on the IQ, right? The academic knowledge that they're going to get. Are they going to be behind in their learning losses? Parents spend so much time and effort and worry about what school I'm going to put them in, what university. And so our focus is on IQ, right? What IQ are they going to acquire? But you all know now, research has proven for the past 20 years that it's not the child's intellectual coefficient. So it's not the IQ that will be the reason for a child's success. In fact, studies show that 80% of their success comes from their emotional intelligence, from their EQ. So if you want a student at your school to then, grow up and become maybe the next president or leader of her own company, whatever it is that you dream for your students to be, well, then you're going to really have to acknowledge and really take seriously that we cannot just focus on their academic achievement and what they're going to be learning and how to mitigate the learning losses, but what is my answer and reply to the 80% that will be the reason for their future success, which is their emotional intelligence, their education on safety, health, well-being, and their social emotional learning. So our answer to this, obviously, as Kidproof, our proposal for this is the Protect Ed program, which is Kidproof's child safety, health, and social emotional learning program from pre-K to grade 12. This is a structured curriculum for all grade levels that was developed by Canadian experts, but also customized to every country throughout the world, because we understand that your country is different, with its own cultures, with its own reality, with its own traditions. So we customize the program to every country that we are in. Maybe there's another social emotional learning program out there, but Protect Ed is the only and the first and only comprehensive program from pre-K to grade 12 that really encompasses all of the child's needs under Maslow. So safety, security, emotional and social learning, and that sense of developing your sense of self-esteem. The great thing about the Protect Ed program as well is that it's extremely affordable. So let me tell you. So I'm going to take a minute here to just explain what the Protect Ed program and what is the solution that I'm offering you, so that your students are able to learn next year, so that they have that desire for self-actualization. So under Protect Ed program, which is a turnkey solution, so you'll receive a student workbook for every grade level, obviously. So there's student workbooks. With that student workbook, there's also a parent guide, because we believe under Kidproof and we adopt under that program a whole approach, a comprehensive approach. We feel that for children to really succeed in today's world and in the 21st century, you can't just educate students, but you have to empower every single stakeholder in a child's life. So it has to be the student, it has to be the parent, it has to be the educators. A lot of the time, today's parents do not have the tools necessary to communicate effectively with their children about a sensitive topic or to protect them to today's dangers. And so we offer them a free parent guide with each student workbook so they can be on with us with our education plan. You'll see that we have teacher lesson plans also for each grade level, teacher resources. I'll talk about them in a second, that are very detailed, structured with learning, specific learning outcomes, innovative learning outcomes for each grade level. Teacher professional development programs. So we have trainings for each of the 4 cycles, totaling over 40 hours, and teacher guidebooks for these trainings. So you're asking yourself, so how much does this cost? And you'll see that for Kidproof, it is very important, and we've done this for over 21 years. The teacher training programs are free. The teacher lesson plans are provided for free. The parent guides is provided for free. And the only thing that the program costs is $12 for each student workbook for each student. And so this goes along. So they have their manual and they have their parent guide for only $12, but everything else is for free. And the reason, and I know you're saying, so this is too good to be true, the reason for this is because as Kidproof, our founder 21 years ago, Samantha Wilson, and up to this day, myself included, our mission and our vision is to ensure that every child in every country, no matter their social economic background, can receive this education that they need and that they deserve in today's world. I think all over the world, you've seen, and studies from the UN, every child-centric organization around the world are saying students from different social economic background were differently impacted. So you have students who were able to continue with education and students not at all because they didn't have access to the internet, because they were poorer than other students. But under the Protect Ed program, all over the world in every country, we have students from very high social economic background that follow the program, from A plus schools, and we have schools that are more remote, from students who are from poor and vulnerable areas. We are able to offer that education to everybody because it's affordable and because it's accessible. So how does the Protect Ed program answer the Maslow's physiological needs? So, first of all, we have every grade level will receive 15 engaging lessons throughout the academic year. So, this is the Protect Ed program is implemented maybe once every month or once every 2 weeks, and you are able to cover the program for every grade level. The lesson plans are always separated under 6 themes. So, be it if you're in pre K or grade 12, you're receiving education for physical safety. So, here, that's our first theme, physical safety. So, this is where they'll be able to answer that physiological need in the Maslow pyramid. So, they'll be able to recognize and build their critical thinking skills in regards to dangers in their physical environment, fire, electricity, poison, road safety, but also how to respond to emergencies, first aid, how to conduct first aid interventions, how to recognize that a demonstration is turning violent, how to recognize that it's an unsafe situation or a violent situation is about to erupt, how to respond in an emergency. So that's physical safety. Second, personal safety. So this teaches students how to really protect themselves from people that are in their lives, be it people that they know, strangers, acquaintances, or their friends. So here we focus on preventing sexual abuse, kidnapping, child abuse in all its forms, how to recognize peer pressure, what to say in peer pressure situations, how to choose my friends. I know all moms and dads here, one of our big wishes that we want our kids to be able to do is how to choose their friends, how to say no, how to set their limit, how to recognize that somebody's trying to control me or somebody's trying to manipulate me. And so they learn these things in personal safety, gender equality, gender-based violence, etc. The third theme is obviously citizenship, ethics, and anti-bullying. So anti-bullying is really covered throughout the grade levels, but always in a manner that is customized to the child's ability to learn and to the reality in his life right now. So we're gonna look at maybe not just the victim and techniques for them to be able to respond to their bully, but also we're going to talk to the bully so they can recognize in themselves what are the emotional factors that are making me bully my friends. Is it jealousy, or is it that I'm being abused at home? A lot of you have done anti-bullying awareness weeks for your students. And you see sometimes that within that awareness week, as they're doing their posters and slogans, you're going to see students that are bullying themselves, each other, and they're saying, I don't want you in my group, I don't want you doing that poster with me. And so we see that sometimes these interventions, because they are scattered, are not effective, and they just rely on slogans, right? Be positive, be kind, be compassionate, don't be violent, be tolerant, but they don't really teach children techniques, and children are not really learning by doing. And so this is why the anti-bullying lessons in the Protect At program have been proven by independent studies that it would cut bullying by 80% in a classroom. And so our program is proven effective. It also teaches students, citizenship values, responsibility, honesty, cooperation, obviously non-discrimination, prejudice, hate-motivated groups, and how they will seek to sometimes recruit teenagers and young adults, and really understand the criminal profile of that. Our fourth theme is internet and technology safety. So anything from pre-K to grade 12, all of the online dangers that they might face, be it excessive screen time, to cyberbullying, to online predators, but also scams, viruses, dangers related to gambling. So anything that you can think of that has to do with internet and technology. Our fifth theme is emotional safety, probably our most important theme. So emotional safety is really emotional intelligence or emotional and social learning. So this is where students will really acquire all of the EQ necessary for them to succeed, be it rebuilding their self-esteem if it's been destroyed at home, being able to really evaluate and really strengthen their body image if it's being criticized online, how to build their self-confidence, how to be assertive, but also how to manage my anger, manage my emotions, and self-control. They start learning this in pre-K and in elementary levels. They take conflict resolution skills and stress management and communication skills. They learn these in grade 1, and so it becomes part of their character. Some of us have received these soft skills training when we're adults, when we're at work. We're teaching these same techniques, these high standard research techniques to students in preschool and in elementary, in a way that is customized to their ability to learn and apply, and also customized to your country. So also, like I said, it's built by Canadian experts, but we want you to really make sure that you know that we're not trying to impose our values, our ways of thinking, our perspective, our reality. A child in Georgia is different from a child in Canada, is different from a child in Morocco, is different from a child in Lebanon or in Nepal or in India. So you're all different, and this is why the program is customized to you. And finally, healthy living. So healthy living is not just nutrition and exercise and hygiene, or drugs and alcohol prevention, but it also includes all of that growth mindset, which is also part of emotional or social learning. So how to set goals, how to achieve these goals, how to have a personal motivation mindset, and have these skills. Maybe just decision making skills. I know people who are 60 years old and still don't know how to take a decision. So it's really important for kids in elementary to have to be proactive in your decision making, leadership skills, teamwork skills, and how to choose my career, how to do my CV, how to conduct interviews. And so we encourage students and we support them and we give them the tools and the critical thinking skills necessary, not just to protect themselves in today's world, but to really develop that social, emotional learning skills and critical thinking skills so that they can succeed in today's world. And we do this in an entertaining way. We really believe that kids learn by doing and playing. This is why our student workbooks are not just cost effective and current and updated regularly, but also very engaging. This is where students will apply their learning, do their teamwork, and do their, they do a lot of scenarios and role play. And so it gives them that opportunity to do that. We have the parent guide, like I said, available in English and French right now, to also given for free to empower parents with the knowledge they need. We believe, and you know this as a teacher, when you're teaching something and then parents are going the other way, and so there's this resistance, but you want parents to be your partners, but you want them as well to return to being their child's first line of defense, to be responsible for that education. And we know that when a child has a positive communication with their parents, an open lines of communication, then they're protected by 85% of any danger. So it's important that kids return to their parents and that relationship is strengthened. And this is why we've created the parent guide, so that parents can receive also the tools, skills, and tricks and education they need to communicate with their children, build better relationships, how to resolve conflict depending on that age group. Every teacher under the Protect Ed program receives a free teacher lesson plan. So we ensure that teachers, again, from every school, any background, when you register in the Protect Ed program, all teachers in every grade level that are teaching Protect Ed program will receive their free teacher lesson plan for that grade level. That would include all resources. That will include not just the all of the tools that she's going to need for that class. So the role play scenario cards and the simulations and the articles and all of these non-linguistic tools that she needs in the classroom, but also the lesson plans themselves are a relief for teachers because they're extremely well detailed, extremely planned out. So here we have in a lesson, for example, you'll see that it really details to the teacher the resources that she'll need and which pages she'll find them on, the student workbook pages that she'll need, classroom supplies. We have here a detailed list of the learning outcomes and objectives and the knowledge that she needs to have. And all of this, because of the pandemic, was, yes, Naveen, it was transferred digitally. So all of this is also available online. But additionally to that, we've prepared the lessons. You know how critical these topics are. You've seen in your own classroom teachers downloading some lessons online about drugs and alcohol consumption, or even anti-bullying, or even internet. They were either not efficient, not effective, but also sometimes it can be a danger to children. If you're talking about sexual abuse or maybe kidnapping, if the teacher does not say the right thing, ask the right question, and lead her students towards the right and safe conversation, that it can sometimes lead a child into danger, maybe create more curiosity to try drugs. And so we detail to the teacher everything that she needs to say in a classroom. This is practically a script. So it's going to tell teachers no, exactly what to say, when to say it, how to say it, questions that she needs to ask, the expected answers from teachers. It will tell the teachers, as much as, turn around, write this on the board, come back, tell this, how to divide, how to do the activity, and ensure that every single way the teaching pedagogy that we have is research proven to be effective, and also is built always on doing and playing and experimenting. So the child doesn't feel that we're just giving them lectures. Do not speak to strangers online. Don't share your personal information. And then you find the child just doing exactly that. Instead, we're going to ensure that we're developing their critical thinking skills by telling them the tricks that predators use online to lure them, for example, and then acting out these scenarios and really learning how to analyze a situation and make safe choices. So, yes, teachers will receive free sets of student workbooks, parent guides, teacher lesson plans for each of the 15 grade levels from pre-K to grade 12. But we also train your teachers. And we don't just train the teacher who will teach Protect Ed. So Protect Ed is a session, it's a class period that will need to be set in your schedule for students. So they'll have a period that is called Protect Ed once every 2 weeks, or once a week. Earlier I said once a month. That's not true. It's not enough. It's once every 2 weeks or once a month. And so you'll have a specific period for Protect Ed taught by a teacher, and we provide her with all the material, but we also provide her with a training by a certified Kidproof instructor, certified by Kidproof Canada. And it's a 10-hour training followed by a testing and certification as well. And there's 4 programs. So There's a program for preschool, there's a module or program for elementary, middle school, and high school. So there's four different teacher training um, programs. Each of them is 10 hours. And we want to educate and train everybody at your school, not just the Protect Ed teacher, because we believe, again, at Kidproof, that everybody has the right to this information. By implementing the Protect Ed program, you're not just helping your students, your whole school culture will change. Trauma-informed teachers, teachers who are informed about social, emotional issues, about safety, about health, how to deal with a bullying incident in my classroom, how to deal with them with my children at home, how to deal with child abuse, how to deal with a fire if it breaks out. Whatever the issue is, every single person needs to do this, especially people who are in contact and work with children. This is why it's important for us to train everybody in the school, because every teacher needs this positive classroom management techniques, how to be you the positive force with your students. So these tips and this training is valuable for everybody, and we make sure to give it for free to every teacher in your school. We provide you with the free teacher lesson plans, parent guides, and student workbooks are only priced for $12, like I said, as an average. Obviously, depending on the country you are in, but it's an average of $12. So Protect Ed will come and answer your need for social emotional learning, self-management, self-awareness. These are all of the elements of social emotional learning that you're seeing here on the slide, that research has proven to provide better academic performance, improved attitudes, reduced emotional distress, and fewer disruptive behavior. So it does answer the promise that I told you. But is it just information and facts that I'm saying? Or are they proven by research? So it's just not me throwing in promises. The program was proven to be effective by a Nielsen study. So, Nielsen is an international global research company. This was an independent study conducted not by Kidproof. And this study was done with grade 6 students who had taken the Protect Ed program for 2 years. And so, about 1,300 students were taken as a sample size. 97% of these students felt that they have learned a lot or several things, acquired knowledge from the program. That's good. 89% said that they enjoy the lessons. So you as teachers, you know that when a child is enjoying something, they're having fun, that means they're learning. So the 97% now makes sense because they're having fun. 95% said that the topics discussed were interesting to their everyday lives, that they felt that they could implement it as soon as they left the class. And this is important for us because we really put a lot of effort into customizing the content to every country. And it's proven that we do so successfully because 95% feel that it's real to their life and that it's interesting. So kids are learning a lot. They enjoy the lessons. It's interesting to their lives, but are they changing their behavior? When we're talking about safety education, when we're talking about exposing yourself inappropriately online and not being aware of your internet footprint or online footprint, when a child is smoking or a teenager is smoking, we're not just doing awareness. We want them to change their behavior. And so the study found that 88% of students stopped doing an unsafe or unhealthy behavior because of the Protect Ed program, because of a lesson in the Protect Ed program. No other program worldwide can boast that children change behavior, that not only develop their critical thinking skills and their ability to think safely, but they're able to do so and then change their behavior accordingly. And so this is why I am confident when I tell you, if you want to elevate your students towards the promises that I made earlier, towards the promises that I made for this webinar, then the Protect Ed program is the turnkey solution for you. And you can implement it by contacting your local Kidproof office. So in conclusion, be it your teacher or your students, now both are experiencing trauma, both are tired. They're going through scary, they're going through uncertain times. And to prevent your teachers, who are your top assets, from going through a burnout, then I propose today conditions and policies and just key steps that are easy to implement for you to really show your students not only that you care, but that you also have an impact on their well-being, that you enable them not only to cope with the trauma they are going through, but hopefully also recover from that trauma. And then I'm asking you today to distribute the guide that you'll be receiving from us, not just to give them the strategies that they can use in their personal lives to cope with the trauma, and things that they can change in their daily habits that will have a big impact on boosting their mood, but also rewiring their brain. I'm also asking you to share that guide because there's a lot of strategies, educational strategies, be it online or face to face classroom, that will help them engage their most difficult students, their disruptive students, their aggressive students. And so I want to help your educators to really be able, if they are protect ed teachers or not, this is really for any educator throughout the world, strategies that teachers have used all over the world that have been proven effective. And finally, what I'm asking you is, before, as you reopen schools right now, and before you just focus and throw yourself and dive into remediation measures and additional tutoring classes and additional hours that you'll adjust your school calendar to be, before you dive into that, make sure and think about, are my students able to learn right now? What kind of classroom, what will my classrooms look like? There's going to be more bullying, there's going to be aggressivity, there's going to be disruptive behavior. Will my students be able to really carry on the additional burden of more hours, of more schooling, of getting content 2 years in one? What am I offering them to answer those needs that they have before they can self-actualize? And so our solution is, talk to our Kidproof local office, find out how you can register in the Product Ed program today, get the teacher trainings set, and then you can start teaching. You'll get your free lesson plans, you'll get your material completely for free, and you can just start changing lives and saving lives. Um, just as a conclusion, we've had a lot of people with us here today, and the guide that you'll be receiving is really my personal message. A lot of the things that and the strategies and the tips, it's really things that I experienced myself. So as an educator, as a leader in my own organization, as a mother, in the past 9 months, especially in August and September, I was really going through a difficult time, and I too had lost sense maybe of my purpose. And it was really through this guide, so writing this guide for all of the educators throughout the world in our schools, and but also schools who are not part of the Protect Ed program, I feel that I just, they felt that it was valuable to them as well. And so just we're distributing it widely, this guide. I just wanted to help others. And so I got my sense of purpose back. I got my strength back. I got my mood back, and my groove back. So I got all of these things back by writing this guide. And I really hope that you'll take the time to share it with your educators so that they can feel better about themselves and be able to cope with what they're going through. I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for your time. In response to the pandemic and to the changes of and going on online learning, Kidproof and the Protect Ed program was one of the first programs that right away issued its digital version. So we've provided schools with free access, be it teachers or students, to free access to our material digitally online. The next step that we did is create this guide so that they're able, as teachers, to give them techniques of how to transfer, be it social role play or games, to online sessions. So in that guide, if you read it, you'll see, because it's important for us again that students are learning by doing and playing and being active, not just looking at a screen or looking at a teacher in a classroom. And so we provided that guide so that they can learn other strategies of how to maybe transfer or translate role play exercise and how to do that online, or a game that is being detailed in a lesson plan and how to do that online. So we've done those as well. But now we're working on interactive content. So for all of our schools who are listening to us, Protect at Schools, we're not only, because we understand that the future and what the future is going to bring is a lot of hybrid learning, right? So there's going to be a little bit of both, and technology is here to stay, and online learning is probably here to stay as well, in some form or another. So what we're going to be doing is transforming our education to our digital content to be interactive as well, so that kids are able to learn by doing. And so this is something that we're working on presently. And then finally, for teachers who need immediate support, we're getting a lot of we're asked a lot during in the past 6 months by our schools to conduct. So we're doing locally through our local offices, we're doing online sessions with Protect Ed teachers to, for example, if they have a specific question for a specific exercise. Some of you are writing us, as you know, as a Kidproof school in any part of the world, so you have access to our Kidproof certified instructors all over the world who can answer a teacher's question. If there's a lesson or an activity that you're not sure how to do, you can contact our educators. They can help you with conducting this lesson. I really hope as school leaders that the things that I talked about today in the guide, it's not just for your educators, but it's for you as well. If you guys remember when you're on a plane, they always tell you, put the oxygen on yourself and then put if the plane is going down, then you put it on others, or then you can help others. So we always have to ensure that you're also doing okay. And research we've seen at the beginning of our conference, 84% of school leadership had said that they were stressed. And this is and twice as anxious. And this is than the general population. And this is was before the pandemic. So I can only imagine what you guys are going through. And so please also use the guides for these tips. When it comes to counseling or it comes to any of these measures, initiating school initiatives for volunteering, for example, make sure that you involve yourself. So you all need to take care of yourself and your emotional well-being, because you have children at home, you have families to take care of, not just your school, not just your students. So how are you reacting with your kids at home? Are you becoming more aggressive? Do you have less time for them? So our children, who are most of they are our priority. A lot of parents forget, especially parents in leadership positions, they forget to make their priorities a priority. And so the price of all of this trauma and stress is paid by your own children. And so make sure, I hope that I was able to benefit you today, not just as a school leader, but also as a parent. So it's really the social worker, the psychologist, or the and also it can be the head of cycle. It can, but the point is that peer support group, those sessions have to be led by either a social worker or a psychologist, at least a counselor who has the ability to absorb all of the experiences that these individuals are sharing, and then has also the ability to lead them towards healing and coping and recovering. So they can be created by school leadership, or they can encourage the counselor at the school to create these kind of support groups. But obviously these sessions are led by a counselor and a professional. How do we ensure that it is confidential, and how do we create these groups? So try to create them not necessarily by department, but more by experiences, and also who is willing, because it is kind of it's a therapy, it's a method of therapy. So if the person is not engaged and doesn't want to share, then you can't force your educators. But as the counselors, as you've normalized counseling, and some of your teachers are calling your counselor and talking about their problems, then she can suggest that support group. And if you have a big volume of teachers that need help, then she can suggest that support group. And it kind of becomes organic. So in the beginning, maybe teachers feel unsafe, and we talk just about the general pandemic. And then we start talking about financial difficulties. And then slowly, from session to session, we go and dive in deeper. Some of the ways that I've suggested for schools, and you can contact us for that text. But in some schools, where they were more afraid of confidentiality. They had the participants sign a confidentiality kind of agreement or commitment of saying that I won't divulge what I hear in this session to everyone, and that and everyone will not divulge it about what I'm going to be saying. And that just gave teachers a sense of safety. But the truth is, once you're in that peer group and people are opening up and being vulnerable, you just don't. There's something in you that switches, and we rarely find an incident where somebody or a teacher divulged sensitive information and then somebody talked about it or used it against her. We haven't seen this. It becomes really a safe space where everybody feels that they're being helped, that they're being supported, that they're learning from each other. So we haven't seen that. But if you want the text for that kind of policy, just to start off the peer support groups in regards to confidentiality and keeping information private, please contact your local Kidproof office, and we'll send that right out to you. So this is something that we have, and we help schools with that. We help schools with anti-bullying, workplace bullying, anti-bullying policies, or implementing these kind of strategies in place to help support teachers. Sometimes when we're training teachers and doing professional development programs, we rarely see the leadership. We don't see the school owner or principal or director or head of cycle. But no matter who you are or what your position is, and if your teachers are learning something, and so there's values, there's standards that they're earning, it's very important that you're present with them. This is why in the Protect Ed program teacher trainings, we make it mandatory for the head of cycle. If this is going to be a new culture, if this is going to be a trauma informed school, if this is going to be a school informed about safety, health, and social emotional learning, then everybody needs to be informed, and the and the standards need to be really spread throughout the school so that it becomes a culture. We've seen a lot of comments in the chat box about workplace bullying, and we see that this is really one of the main factors that really pushes teachers towards burnout. It pushes them towards just living in a toxic environment, but it pushes them to leave the profession. And you always, when you have workplace bullying, it's your best teachers that are being attacked. It is the teachers who overperform, who are really committed. This is who usually workplace bullying targets. And so it is time, and you need to take it seriously, and then really recognize it in yourself. Am I a positive leader? And also recognize it in your team and do something about it. Make consequences clear. When you're meeting with the bully, it's important, or you're doing that investigation, it's important that you don't join the bully with the victim, right? This is not a conflict between two team members. This is not a relationship of equals. When you have a bullying situation, automatically it means by its definition that there's an imbalance of power. And so you cannot bring in the bullying teacher or principal and along with him bring the victim, because you'll not have a full idea, and you're really putting on additional trauma on the teacher. So it's important when you're investigating bullying incidences in your workplace that you separate and you meet with the victim, the target, and also that you meet with the bully person separately. You can find 10 minutes. You can find 10 minutes to just simply disconnect and just sit. And not just, if you want to do meditation, if you want to do, it's something you can do. If you want to take a walk outside, there's always time. There's something in your day. If you look at your day, there's a quote that says, I forget by who, but there's a citation or a quote that says, hi, Zaina, I'm happy you're still here. So there's a quotation that says, the key to your happiness and to your success is found in your daily routine, in your daily habits. There is something that you do every single day that is negative to your emotional well-being. Be it that you spend too much time on social media. You can find those 10 minutes. Sometimes you're back at home, you're with your kids, and without noticing, you open Facebook, you open Instagram, 30 minutes pass by. An hour passes by. A, you were not present. So that time that was supposed to be with your family, you're not present. But B, is you wasted so much time on something that does make you more depressed. So social media has been proven now to cause depression on something that is also a window for you to see and be exposed to everything you can't control. People are dying from COVID, there's economic crisis, maybe higher crime in your country, and these are things you can't control. And sometimes when we are going through a trauma, thinking or always looking at everything that we can't control exasperates our symptoms. And so you close your phone, you're not only depressed, but even you're more anxious about all of the bad that's going on in the world. And so if in your daily habits, and this is just one example, you decide to focus on what you can control, my home, my work, I'm going to block off, I'm not going to watch news as much, I'm not going to keep the TV on all the time, I'm going to restrict social media to maybe just at night, checking it out, but I'm not going to, go into Instagram. You can find 10 minutes to focus on your emotions and apply the strategies that I say in the guide that I present to you. There is time. Sometimes we don't realize how much time we waste by surrounding ourselves or by consuming literally garbage. And so I promise you that. I promise you that you can find time, but you have to make it a priority and you have to make a commitment to it. So you have to be, if you're committed, if you understand, and if you really believe everything that I said today, and so now you're committed to the well-being of your educators, then you will find the time to schedule that 30-minute short meeting once every 2 weeks, so that your teachers can just meet and laugh and connect and engage and share their problems or whatever, or anecdotes. You'll make it a priority, then you'll find time. It's when we always think that these things are less important than doing a meeting about schedules or when we're going to put out the report cards, or things like that. But you will not have the same productivity, the same efficiency, the same teachers focused on your meetings if you are not taking care of their well-being as well. You want them to be creative now. You want them to be problem solvers. You want them to have initiative. You want them to be motivated, to be energized. But you're not, if you don't give them policies or strategies or action plans or tips, if you don't help them deal with their emotional well-being, then they cannot be that partner that you need them to be, especially right now. For the Product Ed program, like I said, anti-bullying is one of the 6 themes, one of the 6 themes that is covered at every grade level. So it's the students at every grade level, they're receiving knowledge, learning outcomes that are structured, that évoluent, donc grow as the students grow. So students are being exposed to anti-bullying strategies and techniques at every grade level in a way that is appropriate to their age and how they live their bullying. So now let me explain more. So we know that if we go into lower grade levels, elementary, the types of bullying that you'll see more physical and verbal. So it's very much more overt. And as students grow, it becomes more social, emotional, or social relational, bullying. So it's by doing cliques, it's by doing, it's not necessarily something that they'll say, but by isolating them, criticizing, making sure that they don't have friends, all of these different techniques, unfortunately, that students are using. And so it's very important that if you have a teenager and you're talking to them about bullying, it cannot be there's a person who strolled your lunch, because it's not necessarily that anymore. There's cyberbullying, there's trolling, and different types of cyberbullying as well. So first of all, when you're talking about bullying, it's very important that children recognize it, recognize the scenarios that are being offered to them as being real to their everyday life, that they can make links between their personal experience, their own history, and what is being addressed right now. So that is the first element or strength of the Product Ed program, by covering it throughout grade levels in a way that is appropriate to the child's ability to learn, but also the realities that they face, and the additional customization of being customized to that country that we're in. Second of all, the reason why the Protect Ed program is effective in stopping and reducing bullying by up to 80% in a classroom is we don't just give big slogans. So it's not enough to say, you know, I don't know, Julie started a rumor about Catherine and she's very hurt. What can Julie do? And just say, well, she has to be kind and she has to say she's sorry and she just has to put herself in other people's shoes. So this is not enough for kids. The reality is, as they're doing this, they're not understanding why the bully bullies effectively. So the bully in the classroom does not really understand. So they say, maybe that day it's something that's pointed out to him, but it's not something that really stays with him. But also, you're not, again, it's kind of like toxic positivity. Right now I'm being bullied by my circle of friends. There's a clique pressuring me to do something. So what do I do right now? By giving just slogans and just treat others the way you want to be treated, and tolerance instead of violence, you're just giving them slogans that are not taking care of the student right now. Right now I need you to give me a technique. I need you to give me a step by step plan of what I should say to a friend who's bullying me, to a friend who's pressuring me. And if I'm not able to say that, is there another technique that I can use? And can we practice that technique together as a class? Witnesses that are there, we also provide techniques for witnesses. So if you see a classmate being bullied, and maybe you have the self-confidence necessary to speak out, but maybe you're not, and maybe you just want to use another technique. So we give specific step by step, and students practice them and re-practice them, and so they practice being assertive instead of aggressive, and they do I statements and how to communicate assertively. And so they learn the technique, but also how to do it. And this goes on with them because, like you said, bullies don't stop in the classroom. There's bullies in university. Your neighbor might be a bully, or, all kinds of people might be bullies throughout your life. And so it's important that we give them these techniques. And then let me just added that I'll address parents. And then the bully, what the lessons will do is really study the profile of the bully in every case scenario. Why do you think he's doing that? What are some of the ideas, some of the things that we're seeing in the scenario that tells me that he might be bullied at home, that he has self-esteem issues, that he's being bullied himself somewhere else, that he is jealous, whatever it is, so that really every student in the classroom develop their critical thinking skills, and they no longer see the bully as somebody who is strong or who has power. They see him instead as somebody who needs help. And so all of the witnesses and even the victims or the targets themselves now are empowered inside the classroom, not only by these techniques, but we've destroyed this image in a classroom for teenagers, for elementary age students, that the bully is not this god that we have to follow. And this is what kids need to learn.
Exactly.
And so this is how we empower them. So the Nielsen study, when I told you that, they found that 88% of students were able to stop bullying in their class. Sorry. 88% of students were able to stop doing something unsafe or unhealthy because of Protect Adolescent. One of the things is that they stopped a bully. So they felt that they had the techniques, they stopped a bully in their life. And so this is why now it's proven. Another or another example of kids changing their behavior is that the study found that 40% of kids were talking to strangers online, but that 94% of children stopped talking to strangers online after their Protect Ed internet safety lessons. So the program, be it drugs and alcohol, be it smoking, bullying, they were able to report child abuse cases that were happening to them or to someone they knew. And so, really, the program helped children stay safe, protect themselves, and think critically, think safely. Now, as for the parents, we know throughout the world. So, this is not something just for the MENA region or something, in a specific part of the world. All over the world, to this day, we have parents that will tell their child, eye for an eye, right? If he hits you, hit him back. And so we have parents that are also, not really aware of the aggressive um, education that they're giving to their children and that aggressive attitude. And so by doing the parent guides, by providing the parent guides, we do a lot of parent seminars and webinars as well. And so we really reach the parents, and we change the message in education and parenting that they're providing. And this obviously also has impact on student outcomes, is that we're going to teach them that same techniques, and we're going to talk to them about the child bully. So the parent of the bully, a lot of the time they'll say, my child is a leader. He's not really a leader. He's just, he's a gang boss. But a leader usually is somebody who will lead others towards things that are positive, constructive, that improves everybody's lives. So this is not really being a leader. This is just being, a mafia boss. And so instead, we show them statistics how bullies later in life have a harder time succeeding than others. And so parents also uh, become part of our plan and become our partners in the education that we do. Even if we don't do any seminars in that school, or the parents who are reading our parent guides learn the same techniques that their kids are learning. So a lot of the time, parents, if my child is being bullied, I'm not sure what to do or what to say. So we give them these techniques. We tell them how to teach, how to reinforce these messages at home, how to re-practice these scenarios or role play exercises, what to do if it persists, how to talk, to understand that teachers sometimes studies say that teachers witness only 4% of the bullying that happens with a student. So not to blame the teachers. So all of these things that we do are, and this is why the program is successful, it's that we adopt a whole approach, not just to the teachers trainings, teacher lesson plans, but also by reaching out to parents and the students themselves. So if your question was specifically about bullying, this is, yeah, quickly. But however, if you want to know the specific learning outcomes for every grade level under each theme, so not just anti-bullying theme, but also, physical safety, personal safety, this is in our teacher guidebooks that you can receive free by contacting our local Kidproof office, so that you have an idea of what are the specific learning outcomes from grade level to grade level under each theme, and so that you can, know what to expect, how we are reinforcing your students, how we are empowering your students towards answering all of their Maslow needs, so that they can get to the stage of self-actualization. Additionally to the Protect Ed program, obviously under Kidproof, like I said, millions of children around the world follow one of our programs, parents and educators. So we do have workshops for kids. We do have, youth empowerment courses. We have employability, so to help students or young adults, should I say, acquire and retain a job. So we have women empowerment, where we have a lot on women empowerment courses and workshops and stuff like that. Parenting, educators, professional development programs, be it in stress management, time management, obviously workplace bullying and how to deal with that. We have child protection policies, so anti-bullying policies to be implemented into schools, anti-sexting policies and how to intervene if there's a sexting incident at your school. So under Kidproof, there's a lot of programs. Obviously, Protect Ed is the curriculum, because we feel that workshops, seminars, school assemblies are great, but they come to reinforce something. They cannot be the intervention that we rely on, thinking it will come and answer a child's need. A child listening, even if, in a school assembly, we know that a person, when you're just listening to something, you retain 30% of that information. So everything that I've said here today, you're going to retain, hopefully, maximum 30% of everything that I've said. This is why you'll have the guides, and you can send it out to your teachers, because this is what research tells us. So children listening in a school assembly will not retain information enough to change their behavior. So a school curriculum, it's activities, it's a fixed period. This allows the child to really experiment with what they're learning, to really work through the simulation, the role play, the game, the teamwork, projects, discussions, and this is why they develop their critical thinking skills. And this is how you'll see changes in their emotional well-being or behavior. if you do have any further questions about our programming, please either contact your local Kidproof office, or you can also contact us directly through our website on www.kidproofsafety.com. So just feel free to get in touch, and I'll be happy to answer anything. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for allowing me to, hopefully just stand beside you and be next to you in this plan. Thank you for allowing me to influence your thoughts, to influence how you see your teachers and educators, and how you want your leadership style to be. So thank you for trusting me with your jobs and with yourself and with your perspectives. I really appreciate it. And it has been a pleasure for everybody. So I'm going to wish everybody good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are. And I will say it, stay safe and keep healthy. Take care.